I'm going to have a son this November. I've spent a bunch of time recently in a pleasant way thinking about, okay, what does this mean in terms of like, what do I give them? What's the world I create for them? Like, what can I do? What is the thing that I hope I can give him? And I think it is the ability to do what you just said, which I'm going to repeat back to you. Take complex parts of life and be able to explain them in a story that makes sense. Because that is so powerful. No matter if you are shipping Apple computers, you are an art dealer, you are trying to explain, like how moon colonies will work, like whatever it is. If you can just go like, here it is, man. Here's the hero. Here's the obstacle. Here's what the hero does to overcome that. And they do, it's a successful story, or they don't, and it's a tragedy. That's how we understand life. That's how we relate to each other. Like the reason these stories stick around is because they're just ways of expressing truth about life that we tell each other. And we tell our kids, and they tell their kids.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mile 40 podcast. I am Bishoy Tadros, the author of Break Barriers and Audacious, both of which are sold on Amazon. And I invite you to join me as I engage with guests to discuss those bounce back moments that we encounter on our personal journey. Mile 40 is a forum to learn about how athletes, professionals, and leaders of all backgrounds stare down moments in life where the only option is to rise up. The Mile 40 podcast strives to remind listeners that the comeback is always greater than the setback. Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. Thank you all for continuing to tune in. I cannot thank you guys enough. I feel like every time I kick off these episodes, you know the spiel by now. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Check out the show notes. Pick up a copy of Break Barriers or Audacious. Just thank you all for dropping those reviews. It really helps the show grow, and I very much appreciate it. Today, I have Steven Puri. He is the founder and CEO of the Sukha Group. He lives in Austin, Texas, with the mission to help millions of people find their focus, achieve more, and have a healthy work life. His career started as a newscaster, interviewer for the #1 youth news show in the DC Baltimore market, then as a junior software engineer. After attending USC in LA, he began working in film production and produced computer-generated visual effects for 14 movies, including Independence Day, which, as we all know, won the Academy Award for visual effects.
This is a great, here is your life, Steven Puri. I love to keep going. This is great.
Yes, sir.
Do you
No,
remember my birthday party when I was 14? That was a big one.
Yeah. No, I know. I am going to cut it right there because I know that there's a lot that we're going to dive into here. So let's get things started right away. Wow. Independence Day. That must have been pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. It was definitely hard. When we went into doing Independence Day, it was this B movie at Fox. It was not like, we have the next Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, we're going to spend a lot of money on this. It was like, those guys who did that scrappy little Stargate movie. Yeah. Well, they've written another one. Huh. And let's see how it goes. And I'm going to tell you, this was a lesson for me in the power of how studios market, where when we started that, we were working in these offices that are basically like those old 1950s government offices where it's all the doors lined down a linoleum hallway that goes 4 football fields long at the old Howard Hughes aircraft plant in El Segundo, kind of like Playa Vista area, right? So we're there, cockroaches, just awful, but it was the only thing we could afford to build these big hangars. So we didn't even use sound stages. We used the aircraft hangars from Howard Hughes to do a lot of those scenes, right? So we're there. And you would need a pencil. And you would talk to Fox and you'd fill out a form. You'd fill out a triplicate form to get the pencil, right? And then they would lose it and you'd call them back 2 weeks later, go, we need pencils desperately. We're trying to write things, right? And they were like, okay, buddy, get in line, right? Leave a message. So we did a trailer, which if you ever saw it, it ends with the White House blowing up, like a big destroyer right over the White House, beam comes down, blows up, right? That played in theaters and it tested through the roof. So on Monday, they call us and we're producing the digital effects. We're producing the CG for the movie. And Monday, Fox called us. It wasn't us going, hey man, the pencils, remember the pencils? It was incoming call. They called and they're like, hey, do you need anything? And we're like, yeah, the pencils would be great. They're like, no. Like, do you need any? And they named some computer equipment. There's $1 million equipment. This is not cheap stuff. And we were like, really? They're like, yeah, at this point, we just want to make sure you make your date. And I was like, wow, that is how it works in the studio. When they smell the hit and they're like, all the attention just swings over and they're like, you are my new favorite child.
Wow. So so much I want to dig into there. Let's make sure that before we go back to that now, let's just give the audience a little bit of background into just who you were before all this even began. Where did you grow up?
Okay. So when I was little, we were in upstate New York because both my parents were at IBM. They're both engineers at IBM. And both came from a level of poverty that I don't understand. Because they worked very hard, I will never know the poverty that they had. That's sort of like, what will we eat tomorrow sort of poverty, right? My dad in a rural area in what is now Pakistan, but obviously that was before the partition, so there was no Pakistan at the time. It was India at the time, right? And my mom in New York. So born there, grew up in Northern Virginia, the son of two engineers. Mom was a systems programmer for IBM, and dad designed CPUs. So that was my first sort of thing of like, oh, this is cool. So I was a little code monkey. I was a hacker. I would, try and break video games and figure out how you could, download them and, swap them with your friends and stuff like that. And that was what I did. At the same time, I got this weird opportunity to host a TV show in DC, which was so odd. It was like a youth news interview show. And this is pre, YouTube and Facebook. So it was kind of like the only game in town where if you were under the age of whatever, you kind of like had your own sort of news show. So I had a weird kind of like childhood of like doing these two things, coding, which is very introverted and lonely, or solitary, let's say. And then once a week doing this news show.
Did you have any siblings?
I have a younger brother, super smart, Harvard undergraduate, dual PhD from Yale, teaches music theory, musicology at UVA now.
Just kind of hearing that background about your brother and hearing about, the dichotomy of what you were doing between coding and being an interviewer, newscaster, it tells me there was something incredibly unique about your upbringing with regards to how you guys were set up to kind of explore, just these very different roads. Essentially. Talk to me a little about your parents and their influence on you.
Well, I'll tell you, growing up in Northern Virginia when we did, and being the only brown, half brown family in any of our schools, there was no moment when I felt like I was like everyone else or I fit in. So I think part of what you're talking about is, there's a trajectory that Michael and I are on that started from, we're just kind of like outcasts, like we're not part of anything here. And that gives you more time when you're not invited to birthday parties. You're not invited to do things. Gives you more time to read books and study and learn how to code and stuff like that. So definitely my parents knew that they had lifted themselves out of poverty through learning and hard work. My dad was incredibly dedicated. When he was in India, he got his engineering degree at Banaras Hindu University, BHU, and then started teaching as an associate professor. And his first year teaching, his students got the top marks in his department, and he got the best student reviews of any professor in his department. He was talking to his dean, or his headmaster, whatever you call it, and was like, "Hey, so do I get a raise?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "But my students are doing great. And they love me." He's like, "No, it's seniority, dude. Like you're young here. Everybody else is going to get the raises, not you." My dad was like, "That's ridiculous. I did more to help their careers." And he goes, "Oh, if you want a meritocracy, like you should go to the United States. That's not what we do here." And my dad went to his dad, was like, "What do you know about going to the United States?" And
Wow.
his dad was like, "I'm not going to be able to afford anything related. I can't even get you the ticket to go there." So my dad, back before the internet, found a way to get an application to University of Illinois to do his master's in engineering. Got, scraped together some money selling some stuff and bought a boat ticket. He went overland to Hong Kong and took a boat to Hawaii, and then a boat to San Francisco and a Greyhound bus. And he got to University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana and, lived in the YMCA for 4 years, sold colors, encyclopedias for money, and paid for his school, paid for his parents to build a house. And that was definitely part of my childhood, was just like, Yeah, do something with your life.
That's incredible. I mean that in and of itself could have been a whole episode just talking about that.
Yeah.
Uh, and that really says a lot about your foundation. But even knowing that foundation, it talks to me about just the regular dialogue between you and your father or you and your mother and the types of values that were imprinted on them. Because it's one thing for, I'm the son of immigrant parents too. And it's one thing to know that your parents have succeeded,
Hmm.
overcoming these obstacles that you and I may not be able to relate to because we can't fully understand, the depth and breadth of doing something like that. But there is a subtlety to how they relay those values, and generally it's through action, as
Hmm.
you're growing up, and sometimes it's in small conversations. So talk to me a little bit about like just the dynamic you two had together.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't remember having a conversation with my dad until my 20s. Um, my mom was very present in our lives. She had her own struggle. Her family died in a fire in Brooklyn before I was born, so I've never met my family. And my mom, her dad left when she was little, so she had two sisters, and I had a hard life in a different way in that they were impoverished because their mom didn't have a job. Uh, my my mother's mother didn't have a job, so my mom, when she was a child, would paint watercolors and sell them like postcards on the street of Brooklyn, and that would help them buy food. One of her sisters, she committed suicide, and the other sister, so she had a very different childhood than my dad, but also saw education as the way out and went to Hunter College and then American. And so most of my interactions when I was little were with my mom. Like, she was very responsible for raising us. She's the one who gave me a sense of, this is how to treat other people. This is how you treat yourself. Here are the things that that I value, that I think you should value in life. My dad, I remember, I would leave my math homework, my science homework, when I finished it at night, and in the morning it would be corrected at the breakfast table. He never really said anything about it. I guess he got up at 4 or 5 in the morning, whatever, and would do that, and then left for IBM. And it wasn't until my mom died in my early 20s that I remember really having a conversation with my dad. I don't remember talking to him. He worked. And so that was kind of my early life.
Got it. Got it. Wow. I think that really lays a solid understanding for us as an audience to understand the unique elements of your upbringing, which I think really lay the groundwork for the unique trajectory which then became your career.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked about how you started off working as, the newscaster interviewer. How old were you when that started?
That was high school.
That was high school. And
Yep.
then you went off to USC after that. Was USC always the plan, or was that, how did
USC was never the plan. No.
okay,
When
talk
I
to
was
us
in high
about that.
school, my friends basically all went to New England schools. And I had done this, this youth news show, which was the top rated youth show in the DC Baltimore market. And USC approached me when I was still young and said, if you want to, you can come to college now. Like, you don't have to wait. And so I went to college a few years early because USC said, come here if you're done with what you want to do in high school. So I did, and they were very generous with me financially. And so I went out there, and then I also got a Watson scholarship, a Thomas Watson scholarship from IBM. So that allowed me to have a job at IBM as a junior software engineer and make money for school that way. So USC came up kind of out of the blue, and they were like, hey, if you want a great journalism school, we have a great journalism school. You're doing this show, or do you want to be an engineer? And I was like, well, the journalism sounds like a lot more fun to go tell stories and meet people. And my life had been pretty, quiet until that time,
Mhm. Were you were you happy at that stage in your life? Meaning, like, did you find
No,
fulfillment in what you were doing?
no, I'll tell you something that sounds like super weird, but this, when I was in film, one of my friends was working on that show, Friday Night Lights. He worked
Sure,
with
yeah.
Pete Berg,
Yeah.
right? And when I was in high school, I knew that football games happened, but I was so disconnected from everyone around me, I didn't really know where or when they happened. So when I watched like Friday Night Lights and that whole thing of like that culture of like being part of high school and whatnot, it's like science fiction to me. It's like, okay, that's super cool. It seems super fun. I knew some days there was a conversation around like, oh, we won the game or something, but I really didn't know where or when it happened. I would just be studying.
That's. I mean, I don't want to age you, but what year was this around?
No, this is like 30, 40 years ago. This is forever ago. And it was just a strange thing when my buddy was working on this thing and I hadn't paid a lot of attention to sports movies, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember watching that and being like, dude, congratulations. That's really cool what you did. And just thinking to myself, wow, that's what I missed in high school. That happened somehow. And I was just.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oblivious.
No, I mean, that really kind of paints a picture for us because that is, I mean, nowadays it'd be really hard to kind of to miss it.
Oh yeah. I mean, in this era, everything's available all the time.
Everything's available. Yeah. But I guess I can't even wrap my head around even like I was, I'm younger than you, but I was in high school 25 years ago, 20 years ago. And you just couldn't miss it. Like still pre, you know, a lot of the things that you have now. So, you know, you opening up about that kind of really helps me kind of get a sense now. So you get to USC. How long were you at USC for?
I did all 4 years there. I didn't do all 4 years in high school, but yeah, I did. Yeah.
And did you, at the time, was it unusual that you left high school early?
Yeah, I was 14.
Wow. So you were in high school for a year?
Well, I'd skipped already a year before high school, and then I skipped 2 more years in high school. I did ninth grade and 11th grade, and then I went to college.
So how self-aware were you, I guess, in terms of like how gifted you were?
I mean, people have been pretty clear with me. They're like, if you work hard, you're pretty smart, you'll go somewhere.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So what at that point, like from a career perspective, what did you want to be?
Well, that was the big question because I'll tell you, part of how I finished school so quickly, like up until college, was there was a program back east called the Talent Enrichment Program out of Duke, I think it was. And then Johns Hopkins had a similar program where two people come up with this thesis of like, what if we gave like 12-year-olds the SATs? And if they score really well, we'll let them come to college for like 3 weeks and sit in a room with a book and a TA and see if they can do a college course in 3 weeks. I scored like a 1420 when I was like 12 years old. And Duke let me go there. Johns Hopkins let me study Latin. I got to basically in 3 weeks, you could say, I just want to learn algebra 2 trig. And you just sat there 8 hours a day, studied it all summer, and just went through course after course after course every 3 weeks, you know? So that I knew like that hard science thing was something I could do, right? Coming from the child of two engineers, it's like, duh, you know?
Yeah.
And especially one immigrant parent where it's like, this is a hard skill. Like you can be a doctor, you can be an attorney, you can be an engineer. You choose anything you want to do. 3 things, right? And then there was the entertainment thing where USC came and they said, you were really good on this TV show. Like, if you want to do that. And I thought maybe that's a great, cool thing to do. Like, it seemed like you met more people. It seemed like you told more stories and it wasn't as lonely as just sitting on my computer all day long.
Now, you had mentioned, the expectations of doctor, lawyer, engineer, and we've heard those a couple of times on this show from different people. As you're exploring this kind of route, and even in hearing, and your brother and what he's done, was there any pressure from the parents at this point in time?
Sure, I'm pretty certain I was like 35. I was in my late 30s. The first time we had a Christmas dinner, my dad didn't ask me if I wanted to go to med school.
Wow.
He held on to that going like, it could still happen, right? And I'm like, Dad, I'm like 38 years old. Like, I don't think med school's gonna happen now.
Wow. Okay. All right. So then I'm glad that I asked. So then how do you go about even explaining this at the time? Or did you not? Did you just kind of follow
Explaining
your
what?
own route?
Explaining what?
Your decisions to, perhaps go down this route academically, and then even talking about your early career
Hmm.
decisions. Did you even feel a need to explain yourself, or did you just kind of do what felt right?
Dude, my life is a series of lucky opportunities that dropped in my lap, and I just worked hard to make something of them. I would like to tell you there's some grand design. When I was 6 years old, I drew in crayon on the wall my career trajectory. No, no. Got to USC, had a bunch of friends that were in cinema TV because it's a great cinema TV school, right? So I may have been pursuing, journalism and broadcasting, stuff like that. But like, you have a bunch of friends who were talking about Lucas and Spielberg and Star Wars all day long. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And I was in LA when film went digital. And I was one of the few people that could talk to an engineer because I was one. And I could talk to a filmmaker because most of my friends were aspiring filmmakers. So my career took off like a rocket ship because it was like not a lot of people that could do both.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's like a higher lesson here with regards to just understanding that, and that ability to even simplify the complex.
Hmm.
When you talk about, speaking with an engineer, and then working with a creative, like a filmmaker, and bring the two languages together, regardless of what field you're in, that skill is always going to be a distinguishing skill. And I think that's something that, if I'm listening to this episode, like, just kind of hone in on that for a second. Like, you understood how to speak these two languages. And as a result of that, you had something that a lot of people didn't have. And, as we're going to kind of walk through where you went from there. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I interrupt you for a second, which is, this, but our listeners don't. I'm going to have a son this November. First kid. I've spent a bunch of time recently in a pleasant way thinking about, okay, what does this mean in terms of like, what do I give them? What's the world I create for them? Like, what can I do? What things will I not have control over? And you're just like, hey, man, go with it. This is the way it's going to be. Like, he's tall, he's short, he's grumpy, whatever, right? And I thought a lot about like, what is the thing that I hope I can give him? And I think it is the ability to do what you just said, which I'm going to repeat back to you, which is take complex parts of life and be able to explain them in a story that makes sense. Because that is so powerful. No matter if you are shipping Apple computers, you are an art dealer, you are trying to explain, how moon colonies will work, like whatever it is. If you can just go like, here it is, man. Here's the hero. Here's the obstacle. Here's what the hero does to overcome that. And they do, it's a successful story, or they don't, and it's a tragedy. But like, that's how we understand life. That's how we relate to each other. Like, it is the great stories. It's the epics, whether it's, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Rama, the Iliad, the Odyssey. Like, the reason these stories stick around is because they're just ways of expressing truth about life that we tell each other, and we tell our kids, and they tell their kids. So I really hope that is something I can instill, or that sense of, hey man, this is how stories work. Life is made of stories, into my children, son this year and hopefully daughter in a couple of years.
I'll take that one step further. I think that, one of the most attractive qualities in a human in general, whether in the context of personal relationships or even in business,
Can you tell it
is it,
dimples? No,
well,
not dimple. Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Forget it.
that of course. No, I was gonna say, and the ability to meet people where they are, right? Like,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that is a
True.
skill set that I think can't be beat, in my opinion, right? And then that's not something you can learn in textbooks. That's not something that you're going to be taught. That's something that, comes from within. It comes from, understanding your own strengths, being humble about your own weaknesses, and being able to, be authentic about that. And I think it all kind of plays into the same theme, but when you take it back to, where you were at that stage in your life, you understood where your strengths lied, and you probably knew where your weaknesses were.
Yeah,
And
I
I
don't know. I would like to say is that self-aware. I'm not sure. I'm actually going to disagree with you on one thing you just
Sure,
said,
sure.
which is you said this can't be taught. And I'll tell you something. So in my tech career, I had one successful company. We built, raised about 15 million, had a great exit for our investors, for myself, for my partners, and all right. And I have had two failures. And by failure, I'm very comfortable using that word where it's like the thing that we wanted as the outcome was not the outcome. It went to zero. Okay. So we don't have to sugarcoat and be like, oh, it's a learning lesson. No, they were failures. I had to meet with investors. I was humiliated and ashamed to go, man, I tried hard and this did not turn out the way I told you I was going to make it turn out. Right. So here's the thing with the two failures, both times I sat, there was one chair sort of by a window. And while it was fresh and painful, not long after we were having dinners, you're like, oh, that really sucked. Like in the moment where you're like, I just want to jump out the window. This is so painful. And I feel like I hurt so many people. People lost their money, people who spent 2 years building this and it didn't turn anything right. And I took a legal pad, like old school pencil and legal pad, not dictating into my iPhone, my messages to Siri, like I want to write it out. And I was like, what do I want to tell myself that I will remember right now, but in a year I'll forget? And both times, the first thing I wanted to write down was the word listen. And I think when you say meeting someone where they are, I think the deepest part of that is shut up and listen, actively listen. What are they trying to tell you? Not just the words, not just this subject, this action verb, this object, but why do they choose that sentence? What's the thing that they're not saying? What can you infer from what this, and you really listen to someone? Yeah, then you're meeting them where they are. You're going, dude, I think I understand how that felt when you went through that, as opposed to like, oh yeah, that sucked. So what do you want for lunch?
Hmm. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And now I'm curious. After writing it down, and
Yeah.
after time has gone on, and we talk about can it be taught? You know, talk to me about the practice that went into play that followed that in order for you to not make the same mistake again.
Um, there, I guess there are a couple interesting pieces to the answer of what you're saying. There is the most obvious one, which is I have those two pieces of paper. I refer to them every 6 months or so just to be like, hey, man, am I still like, you know, doing the thing? Because I do think that we are like heroes in myth drawn to make the same mistakes. The tragedy is we just don't stop the cycle, right? So there is that thing of just correcting myself and being like, okay, am I on track? Am I learning? Am I not repeating my mistakes? There's that. On the deeper level, and this one relates to like that, can it be learned or how do you like inculcate this? Which is, I think that meeting someone where they are, and I think that listening, and I think that understanding someone and being able to build a team of people who believe in the mission, like you paint a picture of here's the reason we are changing this, as well as are willing to invest their lives into this and feel understood by you, is it's really about curiosity. And when you think about like the great interviewers, like I remember in journalism school, like watching with a very, I don't want to say critical eye, but at a very high resolution, like listening and watching to great interviewers on television and realizing that they had a genuine curiosity about the president or the big athlete or the author of the book or the filmmaker, whatever. It wasn't a passing thing of like, hey, Bishoy, tell me about your film. Like that's Entertainment Tonight kind of garbage. It's like YouTuber, bullshit. It's like when someone's really like, it seems like this is a hallmark of what you do. This scene in this movie and this scene in this movie, these characters keep reoccurring. And I noticed like you had a brother who died when you were young. Like, is there a connection there? And that's when someone goes, wow, man, like you really are curious about my life. Let me tell you, and you get great stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're spot on. And I think just hearing you talk through that, it's very reflective. I think like it allows us, me as the person having this conversation with you, and
Mm-hmm.
a listener, to kind of ask themselves, you know, who are they? Are they the Entertainment Tonight interviewer, or are they the person who's showing a general, a genuine interest, and taking conversations to that next level.
Right. People are interesting. I'll give you a funny film example. This is kind of out of the blue, but it will illustrate something to you. If you ever watch this movie, it's an old action adventure movie that George and Steven made called Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? And it spawned a bunch of like Indiana Jones sequels. They're kind of mediocre, most of them. Number 3 was okay. Here's how good the character writing is in the first one, the one that launched it all. I have developed a ton of action films. I have seen even more, hundreds, if not thousands of them, right? There are patterns. There are tropes. There are ways you do stuff. Hey, our hero Bishoy is going to kill the dragon with the flaming arrow through the eye of the whatever that gets the dragon in the third act, right? In the first act, we must see Bishoy with his best friend at the archery range where we demonstrate, but he's a really good archer. You just have to do stupid stuff like that, right? So in the end, the hero can do that. Right? So one of the tropes that you cannot violate is the end of the movie. The hero has to take some heroic action where they diffuse the red LED timer before it goes off. They throw the bad guy into the pit of fire from Haiti. There's like the big action. Here's what I tell you about character. That Indiana Jones movie, the first one that spawned the entire, legacy and the Universal Studios ride and all that stuff. If you ever go back and watch the first one, the movie would end the exact same way if Indiana Jones had never been born. And no one notices. The reason is you love the character. He is so interesting. You don't care. This is not a little indie drama. This is not a Will Ferrell comedy. This is a big ass action movie. And at the end of the day, he does not do the stuff Chris Hemsworth does with huge swords and hammers. The end of the movie, the hero is tied to a stake. He watches the end of the movie happen, and you don't care. You never go like, oh, well, he didn't do anything in the movie. It's amazing. That's how powerful I think great characters are.
Agreed. And you're the perfect person to speak to all this. In the very beginning, as I was running through your bio, I could have just listed everything. And the reason the reason I didn't was intentional. It's because I wanted you to bring out stories like this on your own. But for context for the listeners, whether it was as a producer or as an executive, like you've done work on some of the most notable names: Die Hard, the Wolverine franchises I'm seeing here, Star Trek, Transformers, and to have your name affiliated with some of these productions is absolutely incredible. And I kind of want to give the audience a sense of how long that run was. So from what I'm reading, you sold your first tech company when you were 28, and then after that you went into movie production.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that thing I mentioned earlier about like, hey man, lucky weird thing dropped my lap. Well, let's make a lot of that opportunity and work hard, right? So there was that USC came calling when I was young. It was like, hey, do you want to come here? We'll pay you. Okay, cool. Let's do that. That led to, I was in LA when film went digital and was like, oh shit, film, talk, and an engineering talk. Great, did that. Produced a bunch of digital effects, including like what you said, Independence Day won the Academy Award. Helps your career when a film you produce wins an Academy Award. And so I did that. I had a moment where I'm like, I'm going to wake up, be 30 years old, 40 years old, making the effects for someone else's movies, right? Which is cool, but at the end of the day, you're just a journeyman. You're a craftsman, right? I got to work with Cameron on True Lies, Fincher on Seven, Woody Allen, Jim Jarmusch. Like we did Braveheart. I worked with Mel on a couple movies back before, all the crazy. And then I was like, I think I'd really like to figure out how to make movies, not be a guy who helps make a movie for someone else. And that I did a kind of crazy thing where, again, immigrant dad. By this point, my mom had died. But I had explained to my dad, hey, I just sold this company where I was the president and co-owner. I am sitting on some cash, so I'm not desperate for a job. I'm going to go be an assistant. And my dad, I explained this to him, he was like, okay, so you're gonna be a secretary. This is, the way in which he conceives this.
I just think of like Lloyd from Entourage right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
No, that's spot on. That is what I did. So when I talked to a couple of friends about, like, hey man, I know all these big directors. How do I parlay that into like becoming a producer? And they're like, all these guys know you as the guy who makes the film. They're not looking for you to help them like find material, and you're not going to cast it, right? So a couple of friends were like, if you can put your ego on the shelf, if you think that's a possibility for you, just suck it up. You need to go build like a new network. You almost need to treat like you're going back to grad school to get an MBA in your late 20s. And I was like, doing what? They're like, you should go work a year as an assistant for a seller. In other words, like an agent or a manager, talent agent or talent manager.
There you go. Wow.
And a year for a buyer, which basically means a studio executive, right? And several friends in the same week I was exploring this idea said the exact same thing to me. Like, dude, just treat it like you're a newbie. You don't know anything about this business. Go do this. So I was like, they're probably right. Got a job, didn't barely even submit a resume. I wasn't like, hey, I'm the president of a company. Can I be an assistant here? I was just like, hey, I was just an intern and can I just answer the phones? And I was Lloyd. I did a year and a half at this, talent company, and it was awesome. We represented like a whole range of people from Ray Liotta, Kira Sedgwick, Anne Hathaway, Kristen Dunst, Tobey Maguire, like bunch of Salma Hayek, like a bunch of people, right? And that was cool being on the side of the call of here's what sellers say on the call. And then as soon as that phone call was hung up, because you as an assistant, you're on all the calls silently on mute. And then when the phone's hung up, hear what your boss is actually saying, like, oh, they're never going to make the quote. We should call another producer and try and like up his quote and get a bidding war going. It was really interesting to see. And then I wanted to work for a studio chief, and I had met some people. I knew the president of Paramount, and I was like, I'll be a great assistant. So I went to go work as the first assistant for the president of Paramount. And it was great because once you're on the buy side, everyone wants to be your friend because you're working for the head of the studio. And that was cool. So I did my time there. Then I got an executive job, worked my way up. And then, did the DreamWorks thing, executive vice president for Kurtzman University at DreamWorks, and did that. That was the Transformers era, the Star Trek era, Eagle Eye and all that. And then I went to Fox, and Fox, I was miserable. I really hated working at Fox.
How based on what you see on TV, how cutthroat is the industry?
Entourage is like a reality show. It's not scripted. It's a reality show. Okay. Yeah, there are two shows I've seen where I was like, oh my God, that is so well done. Silicon Valley and Entourage. It's just, that's the story of working in Hollywood.
Wow. And you had mentioned it, like you understood the assignment when it came to, incorporating a steep level of humility coming from where you were before that. But I have to imagine there were some challenges along the way, especially when you knew or you saw problems that you knew that you could fix.
I would like to be so egotistical to say I saw problems I could fix. I'll tell you what I saw more was a world where I thought I knew it well from working on movies, making movies, but then that world of before the movie gets greenlit, I really knew very little. And it was astonishing to me how ignorant I was. It was like that kind of realization of like, wow, there are like 1,000 people that I need to have a relationship with. These talent managers, agents, the directors, the writers, the cast. And I'm like, okay, so I need to make it my mission to go meet all these people, establish a relationship with them, read a ton. I read hundreds upon hundreds of scripts and, look for material. And you meet a lot of people who don't do the work. You meet a lot of writers who are lazy, who think they're just going to like watch a couple of movies, then write their movie. And, you learn a lot. So I would not say I was like, oh man, I could fix this. They just let me. It was more like, keep your mouth shut and like learn as fast as you can. Like it was a new world.
Hey all, it's me, Bishoy. As a marathon runner and endurance athlete, I've come to understand the importance of properly fueling your body for preparation and recovery. Every day, you get a shot at success. How you start your day typically paints a picture of what the rest of the day will look like. Start your day with a super convenient, healthy, and delicious nutritional win. Meal 1 by Creatures of Habit. Overnight oatmeal packed with 30 grams of plant-based protein, chia, flax, and pumpkin seeds. Vitamin D3, omega-3s, a probiotic, and digestive enzymes made in under 1 minute. Stop wasting time or worrying about what to eat as your first meal of the day. Start with meal 1. Visit creaturesofhabit.com, creatures spelled with a K, and use code MILE40 for 15% off a one-time purchase or the first subscription order payment. Yeah, I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I think that that's absolutely the right way to think about it. And it says a lot about your emotional intelligence, quite frankly, really to kind of pick up on that and to kind of commit to that. But at what point then did you feel like you had enough to start taking a little bit more ownership?
When I was at Paramount, definitely being in that position, even though I was an assistant, I was the gatekeeper to the president, right? If you wanted to be on his schedule or you wanted him to return your call, you needed me.
That's right.
So there was
the most
second
important
assistants.
person in these Fortune 500
That's what it was.
companies.
I mean, there were people who got
CEO's
coffee.
assistant.
Exactly. There were wonderful people who worked also in Tom's office who made sure like scripts went out and things got happening and I don't know, right? But I was the one. It's like, if you wanted Tom, you had to get me. So which meant I met all the agents. I met all the talent. Like it was just a revolving door of like the first 6 months, I must have met every A-list star. And when Tom has them waiting for 15, 20 minutes, you're the one making small talk with them. They're sitting in my office trying to get into Tom's office. And that was fascinating because some of them I knew from their agents, because back when I was, in the first assistant job, I was working in talent. So around that time was the time when I was like, oh, wow, like now I do have relationships with these people who know I'm an assistant, but they also know the evolution where they're like, this guy who's the first assistant to the president of Paramount, he's going to be an executive. So I should have a relationship with him now. The fact that I'd gotten that job off a talent desk said that, okay, he's probably being groomed for being somebody. And that helped my career go very quickly. Like when I went to DreamWorks, I went from a creative executive, which is a very lowly role, to an executive vice president at that company in 4 years.
Wow.
And that was just because I knew whom to call at that point and I could get material set up. So in 4 years, I set up like 12 movies or something.
Wow. What didn't you enjoy about being in the industry?
About being in film or in tech, you mean?
In film in particular.
In film. The biggest thing, and I don't want to name names, but definitely culture comes from the top. I've seen that now running my own small companies as well as working in large ones, that when you're the head of a company, you basically can do two things. You set an agenda. Here's what we need to do as a company. And you set a culture. Here's how we do it. If you think you can do more than that, you're kidding yourself. You can't micromanage and get down to the details. You're like, let me hire the right people. Dude, this is the way we're marching and this is how we're going to treat people, right? And I will tell you, DreamWorks, it was awesome. Like there was definitely a feeling from Steven and Stacy on down that was, go home tonight. If you can think of a way to make your movie 1% better, great. And at Fox, it was, go home. If you can make your movie 1% cheaper and don't tell anyone, like that's good work. And it was just horrible. I hated that company. And it all came from the top.
You played several roles, right? Like from being an assistant to being the captain of the ship. And one of the things that I'm hearing, as you're speaking is your ability to lead. And what I'm trying to, figure out in speaking to you is, it sounds pretty natural, actually. You're a good speaker. Like, and clearly, if you were in high school and you were a newscaster interviewer at a young age, and that was really the kickoff for, what brought you to college and then took off your career. There was always, I have to presume, a level of charisma there and an ability to work with an audience.
I'd like to believe, who knows, but okay.
I mean, I think we can confirm it based on the last 40 minutes. It's definitely there. But it's not easy steering the ship. And you did it at such a young age and you've continued to do it. Talk to me about what influences played a role in how you lead.
Ooh, okay. 2-part answer. One part, I had a fantastic mentor when I was a senior at USC, and I started working already at this basic trailer company doing like motion picture trailers and commercials and stuff, right? My mentor there was fantastic, and then he took a liking to me. He's like, "You're smart, you're going places, like come with me." And he started bringing me to meetings to shadow him. And what was so great is when we would drive to Warner Brothers, he would have me drive in his car, and after the meeting, he would grill me. He's like, "So what do you think happened there?" And I'd be like, I don't know. We got served M&Ms. I'm kidding. But you know what I mean? Like my analysis of like, I think they were looking for this. And then he would unpack things for me. He's going, "Well, the dynamic there is you didn't realize Mike Finnegan's about to be fired. And his boss, Barbara, knows this, but Mike doesn't. So really, the way in which you'd pick up on this is when they were doing the Q2 planning, blah, 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 you'd notice this." And I was like, wow, okay, got it. He was amazing to me. Amazing. So that was a really great influence. And I'll tell you, the second thing is this. I think you've had some people with whom you've spoken on this show that have great insights and have led great companies and build great things. Okay. So I'm not there. I'm just a guy trying to make, people happy and, healthy work. But the way in which I have learned that you attract the right people is you have to deeply understand, where do they want to go? Not where they say they want to go, but where do they want to go? Because there is nothing as strong as aligned incentives.
How big people go where they want to go.
Exactly. If what they want is aligned with what the company wants, it's just going to work out better. I've never found a question you could ask or some like clever way to see how they folded a paperclip to be like, this is the right guy. Don't hire Bishoy, hire Jerry. But I'm telling you, when you figure out what it is they want, and it came from a conversation when we were setting up my first company, right? We had won the Academy Award for Independence Day for the visual effects. I got along really well with the director and producer, Roland Dean. We were like, let's start a company together to do this, right? Which is a capital intensive thing. Like the CapEx, we raised $15 million just to get started. And there were a lot of people involved. A lot of players at that, when you're raising like essentially a $15 million seed, it's not like, oh, friends and family will all kick in $50, And we had one of these meetings at CAA that was probably 15, 16 people around a conference table. Everyone was there with their attorney, some with their business managers and their agent. And it was just like this thing, right? And Michael Wimmer, who was an agent at CAA, he was an investment banker turned agent. He, after probably a good 30 minutes of everyone kind of like, well, this thing, but how do we cover this? He said the smartest thing that I have hung on to for years. We were wrangling over this contract. Sony Pictures was one of the parties. Obviously our production company, blah, blah. And Michael said this. He said, listen, it doesn't matter what's in this contract, because if our incentives are all aligned, everyone's going to behave properly. The only thing the contract is going to do is if we misjudge what we all want here, it'll be a thing we use to sue each other. And everyone's like, yeah, you're totally right. And then we have a conversation about like, what is it we wanted? And, Sony wanted Roland and Dean to direct their next movie there after Fox. And we wanted to get an independent studio that was not tied to any film studio. We want to get our own company going and not be like a subsidiary. And there was very honest conversation around like, here's what I want, here's what I'm afraid of. And Mike was exactly right. He's like, if our incentives are aligned, no one will ever pull out this contract and read it.
Funny how it works when everybody comes to the table open about what they want.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So, anyway,
one thing I want to get at or dig into is when you think about, where you were when this all started at the age of 28 versus now, what was your driving purpose back then? And we're going to get into the Sukha company and what you're doing now.
Cool. Yeah.
Let's talk about what your purpose, what drove you back then? Was it, financial success? Was it, proving something to yourself, or was it deeper than that?
I think it was definitely financial success, given that both my parents had related to me what poverty was like. And I was like, we're not going there. I'm going to be the generation that falls back into poverty after they work so hard to get out of it. Right. So absolutely, there's an element of do something with your life that pays money. Don't, paint murals on buildings for free or something, right? Maybe Banksy's rich. I have no idea. So there's that. I think there's also an element of just wanting to be loved and appreciated. After spending so much of my, early life alone, there was a sense of like, what could I do where people would be like excited when I walked in a room, as opposed to like being a non-entity that just no one knew or cared about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't ask you earlier, but so this is going to be your first child?
Yep.
Got it. Okay. And how long have you and your partner been together?
10 years.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Know each other pretty well at this point.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys met.
I married the girl on the yoga mat to my left.
That's amazing.
Yep.
That's amazing.
And
again, going back to that charisma, it definitely takes a charismatic gentleman.
No, dude. No. You're going to laugh. It was not like that. So I was living in Battery Park in the southern tip of Manhattan.
Yep.
And there is an Equinox down there in the Brookfield Place Mall.
I know exactly where you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. So Laura worked at American Express, which is one of the towers.
Right there. She works right. Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
Bingo. So I was on South End. I was like the very end where it looked out at the Statue of Liberty right there on the Hudson, right? I would walk up to lunchtime yoga like Tuesday, Thursday, and she would take the elevator down. And I'd seen her in class a couple times. She's pretty, she's cute, but there are a lot of pretty cute girls in it. It's yoga, So that. And then one day she was on the mat to my left. And at the end of class, I just said to her, I have to tell you, like, I come from like LA, West Hollywood, where it's a pretty competitive athletic yoga. Like people in Equinox and West Hollywood are basically making money off their body. They're actors, they're trainers, they're models, they're, really good. So when I got to the front row in West Hollywood Equinox, it was like an achievement. It was like I was allowed to put my mat there. So I'm pretty decent at, yoga, which you're not supposed to say, but I'm pretty good at it, right? So she was really good. And I just said to her, I was like, listen, being here right off Wall Street, not everyone there is as serious about the practices as I was. My friends were in LA. And I said, whenever you're near me in class, I always I work harder. Like I push myself better. I watch my alignment because you're really good. And she laughed. She's like, oh, that's really sweet, blah, blah, blah. Right? So after that, we would chat. We saw each other in class. We'd usually do the little walk from the yoga studio to the locker room and talk. And it was never flirty. And I'm a pretty good flirt, but it was never flirty, but it was super friendly. And then one day we were doing that walk and she asked my phone number. And I was like, oh, I get it. Like she does want to flirt, but she doesn't want to be seen as the girl in the gym that's like flirting up all the guys or whatever. It's the thing where it's just like, so she's going to text me and be like, hey, Steven, how you doing? I'll be like, how you doing? Right? No. She literally texted me yoga advice. She was like, by the way, if you like, Bishoy's class, you should try Sherman over at YogaWorks. And I read this. I'm like, I wrote back, I think, thanks.
Oh, man. That's hilarious.
We're good there. And then a month or two later, we saw each other in an evening class. And the way it all happened was after the class, I went back to the locker room and I had her phone number in my phone now. Keep this in mind from 2 months ago. And I just texted her. I was like, hey, do you ever want to have dinner sometime? She was on the subway heading up to the Upper East Side with our yoga instructor because they were friends. And she's like, hey, that guy with the dark hair in the front row? And our yoga instructor, Serena, was like, Steven. She's like, yeah, he just asked me out. What do you think? And to her credit, Serena said, he seems nice. You should go. Boom. We are married, having a kid. Thank you,
Serena. Wow. I love New York stories like that. That's
yeah, me
funny.
too. It was great.
No, that's awesome. So yeah, what you said just kind of made me think about that. And that's awesome. That's a really, really, really great story. Are you still you're in Austin now. You're not in the city.
We're in Austin now. Yeah. We came here during the pandemic. My dad lives here. He's getting older. It's nice to be close to him and start taking care of him.
Yeah. Got it. All right. So I want to make sure that we touch on the Sukha company. So talk to me a little bit about.
What do you want to know about it?
When did we start?
We started a few years ago. There were early versions of it. We were experimenting around. And I'll tell you, in the course of doing this, I realized I'm medically diagnosed with ADHD. Not a casual, I think I'm ADD dude, but an ADHD coach who is one of the members of our platform was like, Steven, it's been really fun getting to know you. By the way, I think you should go to a doctor. I was like, okay, boom, check. They were right. So the thing I was thinking is Laura and I have a bunch of friends who work in the Valley and are very well paid engineers and designers by, one of the meta companies it used to be a Twitter, not anymore. TikTok. And essentially what it is a deal where you get the smartest engineers and designers paid the most amount of money they can find in the world to steal people's lives. Flat out. Your job is to steal people's lives. And if you can find one more second of time on site or time in app from 1 billion people, your children will be so wealthy, no one will ever need to work, right? That is the incentive for going there, working for Mark or Evan or, any of these guys, right? And it's really screwed up when you're like, so if you have a thesis as I do, that we have inside is something great. And the question is, in this lifetime, will it get out or not? It ain't getting out while you're scrolling with your thumb. That is how you end up being the old grumpy person who's like, I could have been a contender, I could have written a book. Yeah, you didn't write the fucking book. Give me a break, And it is brilliant how well these things are designed to steal your life, And you couple that with ADHD and stuff like that, and it's really hard to work. And I was like, you know what? What if you were to make work kind of like a fun, happier place and like have beautiful tools for it? So I worked backwards from problems that I had, like real problems in designing this. And we had an early version I did with a friend of mine. And it's just like this evolution of like, how do I make this better every day? And I'll tell you, one of the problems, and I found from our members, this is common, it's not just me, which I call the cold start problem, where I would notice in the morning, I would say, I'm going to get going at 9. And at 9, I would not be going. 9:30, and I would have found time to return those emails, or check my inbox, or scroll through the news, just know what's up, or I'm going to throw in a load of laundry so it's going while I'm working, and I'm multitasking. I'm that efficient, right? No, it's bullshit. I was procrastinating, and when I dug down into it, and I talked to a bunch of members, and of course, you read the books by the smart people, the Clears, the Newports, the Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the Nears. It's very common, like the reasons and the solutions. These is not. Anything I say it's smart is basically cribbed from someone else smart who said it. And it wasn't a two things usually in this case, which is overwhelm about you look at what you have to do and there's so many things. You're like, how am I going to get this done? Or you're overwhelmed because you look at one thing on there and you're like, there's no way I'm going to get that done today. I write my book. That's not a task. That's a goal for this year. It's not like I need to write my book today, right? And when you see those two things, number one, you go into paralysis, right? There's so many things, I'm paralyzed. Or number two, you're like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm not gonna be able to write that. So I just thought, what if we create an app where when you open it up, there's a smart assistant who talks to you and goes, hey, Bishoy, of all the things that are on your to-do list, let's choose 3. It's all I'm gonna let you do. Choose 3 of the most important. That's it, period. I know it's constraining. Just do that. And you're like, well, actually, I do need to write this thing. I need to do my TPS reports and I need to submit the book proposal or whatever, right? Okay, cool. How long do you need? Probably half hour each. Okay, great. Let's do it. And you start. And suddenly the paralysis is over because someone has helped you be like, oh, these 3 things. Yeah, I can do that. And you look at it and you start to get it done, right? The other thing is when your assistant sees that you're doing something stupid, like I'm going to write my book today for 4,000 hours. They're like, you're not going to. But they can offer, hey, you know what? I know you outlined chapters 1 and 2. Do you want to outline chapter 3 today? And it seems like based on your first 2, you can probably do that in about 45 minutes. Why don't I make that your first task? And you're like, oh, okay, you know what? That'd be great.
That's reasonable. Yeah.
That's reasonable. And I was driving yesterday. I had that thought about chapter 3. So yeah, I can jot that down. I can do that. And you build that momentum of knocking things out during the day as opposed to the paralysis of, I don't know where to start, or I'm not going to get this done. I might as well just scroll, right? That was a problem that I had. And the other sort of corresponding problem was the end of the day problem, where it was that, oh, I guess I got distracted the day. I didn't accomplish, I'm going to get up early tomorrow and I'm going to finish the stuff from today and then I'll get started on tomorrow's stuff. And you tell yourself that lie. And then tomorrow you tell yourself the same lie tomorrow night. And it's just dominoes during the week. Matter of fact, Did I ever tell you where the name of my company comes from?
I'm looking. It says it means happiness from self-fulfillment in Sanskrit.
It does. This is where it comes from. And it actually involves Laura and yoga.
Mm.
Right?
Oh, wow. There you go.
This ties it all together. When we were going off on our honeymoon after we got married, we were going to go to Bali. Yoga barn, this great yoga culture and all that, and just super chill out. And we're going there. I was talking to Laura. I was like, I have to come up with a name for this thing because we're going to name it something real now, right? Not like Focus App 14, mate distraction thing, whatever. And I was thinking, this is such a great gift from the universe because for like 10 days, no one's going to bug me. No one's going to call me while I'm on my honeymoon and be like, can you approve the PO for the staplers? It'll be fine. So maybe something will bubble up from my unconscious. And Laura's like, yeah, it's cool. It's really great. Because I said I wanted something that's like the way Amazon or Nike are not like descriptive of their products, but they give you some sense of them. So I said, what if on the first day I do a couple quick Zooms with some of these early members and just ask them what's their favorite feature? Like, what's their favorite thing about it? And that'll like seed my unconscious. She's like, go for it. I'm gonna go to the pool. I will see you at dinner, my friend. And so I did this and I bounded it with like, just give me 10 minutes. And a couple of people said, I'm happy to talk to you. So I asked all the dumb questions of, oh, what do you like? Do you like the focus music? Do you like the timers? Oh, do you like the little coach that tells you when you're over time? And the third one, I was going into my wind up where I'm like, okay, it's been 8 minutes. Bishoy, thank you for your time. It's really generous of you. And the guy said to me, Steven, you asked the wrong questions. And I was like, okay. Like, what was the right question? And he's like, you should ask me why I pay you. And I was like, I wouldn't normally be that bold. It's only 30 cents a day, but okay. Why do you pay me? He said, at 3:00, I can be playing with my kids. They're 2 and 4. Or at 6:00, I can be down on myself and feel like, where the hell did the day go? And I said, the difference is, did I open your app in the morning? So I pay you for those 3 hours because my kids are not going to be 2 and 4 forever. And I want to have those memories. And I was like, oh, okay. Thank you for that. So I went to dinner with Laura. Of course, I was like, I spoke to this guy today who is more articulate about what I do than I am. Like, let me tell you what he said. And she's like, that's great. So we're brushing our teeth, going to bed that night. And Laura looks at me. She goes, you know what he said to you? I'm going to tell you what he said to you. In yoga, we hear all these like Sanskrit terms, karma and dharma and, satya and all that kind of stuff, right? He's telling you that the productivity tools you're making are just the pathway to walk on. It's not the goal. The goal is Sukha. The goal is he wants to be happy. He wants to feel self-fulfilled. And I, from bed that night in Bali, went on my phone, found that the Sukha company, the happiness company, was available as a domain, and I bought it. And that's how we named the company.
Wow. I you can't see, but my skin, I just hearing that story kind of...
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, just hearing that.
That's what we aspire to do.
Especially as a dad, like just kind of hearing that story and kind of understanding how important that feeling is and the things you would do, knowing how fast time moves. I think that you can't say enough about that. Talk to me about how many iterations you've had to go through so far.
How many fingers and toes do you have?
Yeah, I know.
Not
right?
enough.
Yeah.
I will tell you, one of the best things is our community is really vocal. As we launch features, as we pull features out, the continuous feedback. Like even while you and I are talking now, I have a screen over here to my left and it's just people talking. And one of my friends who's an engineer, like talk to them about like, well, how do you want the feature to be? And I think that's probably the best thing about the company is it is not just the features. Like, yes, it is 1,000 hours of focus music because I have a bunch of friends who are film composers with time on their hands, right? So you can read about the best practices scientifically and compose a bunch of music. You can have Pomodoro timers, you can have tasks, all the stuff we have, right? But they're all kind of table stakes. The coolest part is sometimes we'll launch a feature, be like, hey, we were thinking about, what if there was a group chat? What if all these people in here could actually know each other and talk to each other. Would that be distracting as fuck? Would that be like, why am I in a productivity app if there are other people? I hate this. Or would it be cool? And like a woman said this to me, another member said, because I was asking, like, should we launch this or not? And she said, listen, I can go to the Nike store and I can buy a pair of shoes. They will sell me a left shoe and a right shoe, and I can go run. But there are 100 million people in the Nike Run Club. Because you run together, you run faster, you run further, you're more accountable. And the day that you're kind of like sucky in bed, and you're like, I don't know, your friend calls you, is like, Bishoy, come on, man, let's do this. I'm downstairs. You go run. And the day that your friend needs you, you're there for him. She's like, I think you should do it. And we did it. And that's cool, having that kind of like community that's very vocal, including stupid shit we've done where they're like, stop this, please don't do this again. You're like, okay, delete, comment that code out.
I mean, look, that's the perfect analogy for this show. Given the Nike Run Club analogy is the perfect, it's the perfect analogy for mile.
There you go,
40.
mile 40.
And yeah, and a lot of people listening definitely understand what that's all about. And hearing you speak, is it fair to say that you're having the most fun now doing what you're doing?
I am, probably just because I've made so many mistakes and had so many failures that now realize that as long as no one's dead,
yeah,
like you can kind of like move forward. You can go, hey man, I'm really sorry. Let's try this differently. This is what I learned. And be like, okay, cool. I've made mistakes too. It's only if someone's dead where you're like, okay, I don't know how to recover from this. And when you talk about like the setback and the comeback and that sort of thing, like if you'd asked me in my 20s, oh man, the highs and the lows were crazy. I remember would work on a movie so hard and it would bomb. Like not every movie is good. And it was just like, oh God, everyone's going to think we suck. And now I'm like, hey, you want to see a bad movie I made? Come here. This is really funny, And it's just that feeling of like, you're going to move forward. Just try to learn. Try not to repeat the same mistakes. Make new, better mistakes.
As we round things out here, I'm going to go a different route than I usually go with regards to how I end it. Because I'm not going to ask you to like reflect and give me some sort of insight or to, tell me how you're going to do something in the future. Because I feel like you've got such a unique perspective given how you've managed to succeed in all these different areas. And on top of that, when you think about where your parents came from and the transfer, not just of knowledge, but of capability and influence that they were able to impart on you, I can really only think about the next generation. You're going to have a child now. And
Yep.
I'm not going to ask you like how you anticipate to parent this child because, I think there's so much that you're going to figure out along the way. But what I will ask you is, now that you've had such a dynamic journey and so many powerful influences along your journey,
Mm-hmm.
what excites you the most about fatherhood?
I hope it's the curiosity, like seeing my son and eventually my daughter be curious about the world. I can't wait for that. I can't wait for like the questions they'll ask about why is the sky blue? Or, why did mommy say that? Or, how do cars move? Or why are leaves like, I remember when in CG we had to create a tree, and this is a while ago. And man, we went through so many iterations where even a layperson could tell like, it looks a lot like a tree, but it's like 1% wrong. I can tell it's not right because you knew from so many trees exactly how a branch would move, how every leaf on the branch would move in the wind. And it's like, to describe that kind of subtlety mathematically was incredibly sophisticated, but your eye did it like that. A 5-year-old could do it. I'm really excited about, I hope my children are curious about the world. And I hope they ask me questions where I'm like, I don't know, but let's go ask, ChatGPT.
It's cool. Like I think, and this is how I'm going to round it out. Like I think back to what you said about who you were in high school, and you mentioned the fact that you were kind of an outcast. And now, like just hearing you talk and seeing the work that you've built over the last couple of decades, like you're going to be like the coolest dad. Like hands down. So you went from being an outcast in your own words, now being probably the coolest dad just because of all the experiences that you had and all that you can speak to and a lot of the answers that you have the ability to give that, a lot of other dads are going to be pulling out Chat GPT and Google for. And so I just want to let you know that, my friend. I think you're a really cool dude, and I'm honored and privileged to have had you on the show today.
Bishoy, I am so flattered. I'm sorry you said that. I'm just going to tell you this. I am bracing myself for the fact that things that you and I think are cool, my kids are going to be like, whatever.
No, yeah,
like,
they're you know what, like other dads are going to know you're cool, and that's what's most important. I can tell you, exactly. I can tell you as a dad, your kids are not going to think you're cool, but if other dads think you're cool, that's what's most important. So,
can I tell you how many guys our age ask me when they know I worked on Die Hard, on Die Hard 5, they're like, the number one question I get is, so I've had this debate with my friends. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie or not?
Well, what's the take?
Oh my God. I can't, if I had $1 for every time I did that, I'd pay for my kids' college.
Oh man.
Do you want to know the answer?
I want to know the answer.
Yeah. I'll tell you the answer again, which is this, which is to say, the best movies, the best art in general is where everything is different, but you can tell it's cut from the same cloth. There's a cohesion to it. So it's not like this is a one color piece of cloth, but you could take any little piece and look at the whole thing and go, yeah, these all belong. These are all cut from the same thing, right? They may be disparate. So how that applies, that weird metaphor here is this, is should you go back and watch the original Die Hard, which is so, it's like Raiders, right? It is a movie that is so well written, 30, 40 years later, writers still come into your office pitching, well, my movie is basically Die Hard by a, you know what I mean? Or female. It is that tight a story structure and the characters are that well drawn. Now, at its heart, what is Die Hard? Die Hard is Taken. Die Hard is Mission Impossible 3. It is guy loses love of an important woman in his life, needs it back. And Die Hard does it so obviously. If you ever watch it again, the scene in the limo with Argyle, the limo driver, where Bruce Willis is there, right? Argyle bugs him deliberately. It's just like, hey man, why are you here? Hey man, why'd you come to LA? Hey man. And Bruce is like, shut up. And finally he tells him, and Argyle says to him the entire plot of the movie in that scene. Argyle goes, okay, let me get this straight. So your wife left you for some rich guys here, and you came here thinking like a caveman, you're going to throw her over your shoulder and drag her back home. And Bruce is like, yeah, something like that, right? The screenwriters literally encapsulate the core of the movie in 2 sentences with the limo driver, right? The movie plays out, and I'm going to tell you straight up, you can say that it's an awful thing where terrorists come and all that. No, it is wish fulfillment. That movie is so satisfying because wish fulfillment, and I'll tell you, it is Bruce Willis's wish. It is John McClane's wish that happens. And this is why. Because when he goes there, he is a street cop who's used to running around the streets and jumping and shooting and kicking. Those are his skills. And he's poor. And he is confronted as soon as you get there. His great stories are about conflict, right? He's confronted with a tall building with rich people in it that have taken his wife. And he looks at that and he goes, I cannot compete. My wife is gone. But you know what? She would want me back if something happened where I needed to kick and jump and shoot. And his wish is fulfilled. The worst thing in the world happens and endangers his wife, which is exactly what he wants. And the end of the movie, he carries her like a caveman over his shoulder out of a burning building. And it's there, right? So when you think about those movies, and Taken, by the way, is the exact same movie. It's just with the daughter that he wants to get the love from, to the wife, right? So the answer to your question is, it is ultimately a movie about family. It is about, I want my family back. What time of year would you set a movie about a family being together? When are families together? The holidays.
There you go. There you go. Answer had, everybody. I think that is the perfect way to end this episode. Steven, I can't thank you enough for everything.
Super fun. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, look, you've imparted a lot on us, and this is fun. That's what makes it easy for me, is having fun conversations like this. So I just want to thank you for coming on the show today.
It was awesome, and I hope this was entertaining. Anyone who's still listening, I love you.